Hey, my name is Jordan Jukes with the Jukes Law Firm. I want to talk for a few minutes today about something that's been a real issue recently. It's when a loved one wanders or elopes from a hospital or a nursing home. Let me just talk a little bit about that. I want to share some of the law, some of the consequences of it, and what you can do as a family member to prevent it. And if it does happen to you, what you should consider when it does happen. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about what elope or wander means. These may sound like strange words, but it essentially means, elope or wander means what happens when a patient who's been checked into a facility, such as a hospital or the ER or a nursing home, or maybe even a psychiatric facility, leaves without being checked out or without being discharged. This happens quite frequently, and it very often happens when someone is elderly and has dementia or Alzheimer's, or perhaps they have been checked in due to a drug addiction, or they're someone who just is in some type of mental confusion or psychosis. So they've been checked into a facility. They've usually begun some type of treatment, or if they're at a nursing home, they are a resident there. But at some point they leave, and they leave without being authorized or checked out by the facility or the professionals at that facility. That's what we call an elopement or a wandering. And there's actually a little bit of a difference between the two. An elope is when someone leaves purposefully, where they don't want to be there. They feel like it's not some place where they want to be. There's a loved one that they want to find. They don't want to be there, so they leave. Wandering is more when they don't have the mental capacity, and they leave, and their mind is taking them somewhere else. So there's I don't know if there's a real distinction between the two legally, but that's two ways that you can differentiate it a little bit. There's some very serious consequences that can happen when a patient or loved one elopes or wanders from one of these professional facilities. Of course, the most obvious one is injury. They can also lead to death, and it can also lead to long-term mental issues as well, especially if they're exposed to the elements once they've left and they're not given shelter and they're not found immediately. But what happens is if a family member or loved one leaves one of these facilities and they elope or they wander, there are real consequences. That allows the family member of that person, especially if they have diminished capacity or they're elderly, to be able to bring a claim against the hospital or the ER or the nursing home, a legal claim for the injury to the patient, for potentially their death, or what we call a wrongful death claim. And they can also bring a claim potentially for a breach of contract if the patient or the family member signed a contract for them to be there and to provide security and safety and health. There can be a breach of contract claim. So there are several different legal claims that can be brought either by the patient directly or most often from their friends or family members who have charge over them. So let's talk for a few minutes about what to do if a family member or a loved one is found to be missing from one of these types of facilities, from a hospital or nursing home. The most important thing you should probably do first is contact the police. This is really important. The police and hopefully a detective will be able to organize a search team. They'll be able to go to the hospital and get the requisite evidence, video, those types of things to make sure they can get a quick lead on where this person may be. And very often it helps to bring a photo of the person, any witnesses, and believe it or not, it's really important to be able to identify where their favorite locations are. Is there a favorite restaurant nearby? Do they like nature? Do they want to go out into the woods? Are they perhaps looking for a friend who lives in the area or a family member? So give the police as much information as you can so they can start pursuing different possibilities, leads where this person, this loved one may have gone. Another thing to do is obviously call the facility. You want to put them on immediate notice, and they probably already know, but you want to put them on notice that your loved one, your family member, is missing. And very often family members are found without any harm happening to them. Sometimes they're just walking along the road. Sometimes they have wandered to a favorite restaurant or a location, and they're being just peaceful, and they didn't want to be there. But very often they've been injured, and we've even seen some cases where patients with dementia or some level of psychosis or confusion have been struck by passing vehicles while they were walking on a road because they just don't have the mental capacity to act for their own safety, which is why they are in the hospital in the first place. Some other things that that you may want to do is, first of all, obviously don't panic as well. Call friends and family members that they may have been in contact with recently. If they have a phone, obviously call their phone. And then of course, check some of their favorite locations. If you know that there's a favorite restaurant nearby that they've been to, a family member, a friend, go there, talk to them, search that out. And again, go talk to the hospital and do whatever you can to provide the hospital with whatever they may need in order to do their own investigation. The hospital or the nursing facility, they're going to want to investigate, conduct their own investigation to try and find their missing patient as well. Well, I wanted to share just a few real-world examples that we've seen, that our firm has seen, or of recent cases that we've seen in the news about this. We handled one not too long ago where an elderly gentleman had dementia, and he was actually at a hospital in the Atlanta area, and his family left. There was no monitor or sitter placed to him, and he just got up out of his bed and he walked down the hallway, out the doors and onto the freeway, and he walked for almost 20 miles before he was found, but he was literally walking home. Well, for this gentleman who was in his 80s, didn't have walking shoes on, walking 20 miles really caused some injuries to his hips, and also had some, he was walking in the rain and the cold, and so he really had some sickness involved. Fortunately, he didn't die, and we were able to successfully bring a claim on behalf of his family against the hospital. Another real-world example involves a nursing home. We represented a very nice lady who was in a nursing home, and when the nursing home attempted to transfer some of the residents to a bus that was waiting outside to go on a field trip, during that transfer process, this lady left the nursing home, left the purview of the staff there, and ended up wandering down the road for some distance. She too obviously ended up being safe in the long run, but that was a successful claim as well. One that was in the news a little bit more recently was a young man who had been in and out of, a very sad case, who was in and out of rehab facilities for drug abuse. And he was essentially checked into a hospital and then really eloped from that hospital, and the next day was found on an interstate having been struck by a vehicle, and of course he died, and a wrongful death claim was brought on behalf of his family. Another case that we recently took was when a father was checked into a hospital emergently for withdrawal and psychosis or mental confusion, and just was there for a few hours when he wandered off, and the hospital was unable to find him. The police were called, and a claim was brought on his behalf when he was found passed away due to exposure not long after. So these cases are going to be very serious. Usually, or hopefully, there's not a serious injury. But very often, people who have diminished mental capacity, who can't think for themselves or make decisions for themselves, end up doing things that put themselves in danger. And it's very sad, but sometimes it results in death or disfigurement. And so a claim can be brought against the hospital or the facility where this happened at. So I want to talk for a few minutes about the legal standards that apply when a hospital is or a facility allows one of their patients to leave without being discharged. There's really 2 or 3 types of claims. The first one is what we call negligence. Negligence is just generally defined as what a reasonable person would do under the like or same circumstances. And it applies really to anyone, common people, people that aren't necessarily doctors. A claim for negligence can be brought usually against that facility when a patient leaves. But the more common and really the better claim is for professional negligence, or what we call medical malpractice. Medical malpractice is found or defined within the statutes in Georgia under OCGA 911-9.1. And that's really an important statute. Again, it's OCGA 9-11-9.1. What the statute essentially says is when there is a licensed professional or medical provider who commits an act of negligence or really breaches what we call the standard of care, then you need to, in order to bring a claim against that individual or against his practice or her practice, you have to be able to allege professional negligence, but you have to bring in an expert with the same training, skills, experience, and education as the would-be defendant or the doctor that you're going against, or you're naming in a claim against them. Without a doctor's affidavit written in accordance with 911 9.1, in a lot of these cases, the judge is probably going to kick your claim out before it goes anywhere. So having a competent doctor, one who's qualified, who knows, who has familiarity with the type of facility where the patient was left, whether it's, again, a hospital or an ER or a nursing home or a psych facility, you have to go hire, retain a doctor to look at all the medical records, examine what happened, and then draft an affidavit that can be filed along with the legal complaint to allow you to be able to have a viable claim against that hospital. There's also some rules and some regulations, and I'm not going to go into detail about those, but there are federal rules, there are some state rules, there are things you want to look at maybe with OSHA and some other government agencies, especially with accreditation with hospitals, that really should be looked at and examined, again, by an expert to be able to advise you what type of claims may exist, but also what sort of guidelines and procedures the hospital or the facility may not have followed that led to that patient eloping or wandering from the hospital and leading to injury. So considering the background of what's happened and the various laws and regulations and rules out there really are important in considering these types of claims and what types of claims can be brought. I want to talk a little bit about what hospitals and psych facilities and nursing homes can do in order to prevent these types of injuries and these types of claims being brought against them. And first or foremost, they have to have a proper assessment of the patient. They need to know, is this patient a risk to wander? Are they experienced confusion or dementia? Or have they fallen in the past? Are they someone who's eloped in the past? So they have to do an assessment. And any expert you talk to will tell you that one of the first things a medical facility should do when they see a new patient is do a full assessment. And one of those should be the risk of wandering. Another thing that they need to do is monitor that patient once they've been admitted or are within that facility. And then if the hospital, the providers know that that patient is a risk to wander, they need to have someone with them almost constantly. And that should be a sitter, someone who's relatively, it doesn't need to be a professional, it can be almost like a babysitter. Someone that's just paid to sit in their room or just outside the room, that if this patient ends up coming out or expresses a desire to leave, they can quickly call security or the nurse or maybe even a doctor and say, hey, John Doe here is attempting to leave, and so that patient can be kept in a safe environment. Another thing they can do is employ adequate safety measures. And those, there's a wide range of those: video cameras, protocols for the nurses and the staff on hand, check-in and check-out procedures, in some instances, depending on the facility, locked doors, and some even have electronic devices like bracelets or watches that they put on their patients who are known to wander or who may even be a security risk to themselves or to other people. And sometimes when a patient is checked into one of the facilities, they have suicidal ideations or they intend to self-harm in some way. So these facilities have to do some extra precautions to make sure that that person not only doesn't wander, but keeps themselves safe as well. And then really what's most important for these facilities is that they have some type of system in place. They just need to have something written, some protocols, something that's going to allow them to be able to recognize, what do we need to do in the event there's an alert and someone is found to either be in the halls or maybe left the facilities? What do you do to prevent that? What are the protocols that need to be put in place in the event that happens? And really, what emergency systems need to be in effect once they're programmed. Once they're initiated. every facility is going to have something a little bit different. Certainly a hospital is going to have something different than a psychiatric ward that has, some lockdown procedures, but they need to have some plan in place, some security measures in place. So I just wanted to share a few things with you today. I hope this is helpful. I know that this happens fairly regularly. It's happened in our area a lot recently. And hopefully it doesn't lead to a serious consequence, but definitely injury and death are potential consequences. So feel free to call us if you have any questions here at the Jukes firm, and we'll be happy to help you out.